Thank you so much for everyone joining us here today. My name is Michael Coyler, and I am with Marion County's Health Promotion and Prevention Team and our Problem Gambling Prevention Services. I'm also joined by our co-host, John Ackley with Bridgeway Recovery Services, who I will introduce a little bit later, and a special guest, Julie Hines, the Executive Director of the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling. Again, we want to welcome everyone who's also joining us on Facebook Live. We are broadcasting this currently on our Health and Human Services page for Marion County, as well as we will be rebroadcasting this on Capital Community Media. We're very excited about that additional partnership with them too. So I just wanted to go over what we're going to be talking about today. Right now, we're just going to be going over some welcomes and introductions. A little bit later, in a few minutes, we're going to have information from our middle school art search to acknowledge winners of our local middle school problem gambling awareness art search for our awareness calendar. We'll also be joined by Julie Hines with the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling. Again, she's the executive director there. And then both John and I will be discussing our main topic today, which is problem gambling, gambling insights, and seeing problem gambling in 2021. Hopefully, we'll also leave a little bit of room for questions at the end as well. Now, one thing I did want to mention is if anyone is attending today, either on Facebook Live or who is not registered through our registration page on Eventbrite, we invite you to do so. Anyone who is registered and attends on our WebEx will also receive a problem gambling care kit with additional resources, great information, and we'll be sending that out to you as well. So if you are not registered and we do not have your address to send that to, please do so that way we can get that to you. A few things before we get started. We just want to acknowledge that this is a safe space environment where everyone is accepted regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, identity or expression, national origin, ability, socioeconomic class, and age. We expect that all people will be treated with respect, and we state that wholeheartedly. We will be doing a live poll. So if you go to pollev.com/MCHHS 2019, or there's also an option to text there that you can see. You can participate in our live poll. We invite everyone to do so. Hopefully, this not being an in-person event like we normally like, we wanted to try and get some additional feedback from our participants who are here today. Also, please answer honestly and keep all responses appropriate, of course. Another thing we wanted to mention is that for educational purposes, we will be including images that may be triggering to those who are in treatment or recovery for problem gambling. So just a forewarning there. And if you do have any questions, please place those in the chat. One of our event organizers will try and answer those for you as we go, but of course, we'll try and leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you might have as well. All right, so this is a very exciting thing for us here at Marion County, as well as anyone that we come across as partners of ours as well. Each year, 5 middle school students are selected in Marion County to be considered for the next year's problem gambling awareness calendar, which is distributed to thousands of people throughout the state of Oregon. In 2020, over 150 students participated in last year's art search in Marion County alone. We then selected 20 students who were voted on at our Health and Human Services building off of Silverton Road from visitors and employees. We had probably over 50 different people vote on who they liked and who they thought should be winners. And 5 winners were selected to be a part of the Marion County art search. Those were we have 5 finalists. These middle school students' artwork were chosen based off of prevention messaging, creative concepts, and artistic skill. And we are excited to announce the winners of the 2020 Problem Gambling Awareness Art Search in Marion County itself. So in fifth place, we are excited to announce that Jordan Richardson Howry of Salem placed again for some great content and some really great ideas in terms of putting into her artwork itself. So congratulations, Jordan, you did an awesome job. All right, in fourth place, we had Jacob Austin of Salem. Jacob is actually the first homeschool student that we've received artwork from, and Jacob is also selected into the art calendar for the month of June. So congratulations, Jacob. You did an awesome job. All right, in third place, we had Taylor Alexander of Mount Angel. We've received artwork from Mount Angel Middle School for several years now, and we're excited to announce the inclusion of Taylor's artwork as well. Taylor's artwork is also included within the calendar for the entire state of Oregon, and you can see Taylor's artwork in July of 2021. So congratulations, Taylor, you did an awesome job. All right, second place, our runner-up is Grady Barnes of Salem. Grady did an awesome job with his artwork and incorporating some themes that he was inspired by, and Grady was is from a middle school that we've given these presentations. I've given a presentation to. And so I'm very happy to see Grady's artwork included, as well as the upcoming months. So just in a day or two, Grady's artwork will be front and center on everyone's calendars for the month of April. So congratulations, Grady. And then lastly, our first place winner, who I believe is here today, is Emmanuel Sandoval of Mount Angel. Emmanuel has submitted artwork last year, which was also very well done, but unfortunately didn't make it into the calendar. He decided to have artwork in this year's calendar as well, and we're very glad that he did submit artwork. Congratulations to Emmanuel for sticking with it and making the cover of this year's calendar. Emmanuel, you did an amazing job with your artwork, and we're very, very proud here in Marion County. So thanks to all of the students who participated, not just those who are our winners, but also to all of the students who submitted artwork. Anyone who would like to receive a calendar can pick one up at 2045 Silverton Road Northeast, Suite B in Salem. Our first 50 people to register for this event and attend will receive one by mail. And of course, like I had mentioned before, if you would like to be considered for the Problem Gambling Care Kit, please register at pgam2021.eventbrite.com to submit your address and registration. So once again, congratulations to all of our winners, and hopefully, I think you guys can hear that, some applause. Again, you guys did a quite amazing job. All right, so next I would like to welcome Julie Hines, the Executive Director with the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling. Julie sits on the National Council on Problem Gambling Board of Directors and is also currently an advisor to the U.S. Operations Epic Risk Management, an international gambling harm reduction organization. Julie's background spans 19 years in gambling prevention, including roles as a coordinator of Lane County's Problem Gambling Prevention Program. Has also been the director of responsible gambling for a statewide nonprofit in Massachusetts. Has done research and consultation across the country. She's also a mom of a tween and a teen and is an avid Ducks fan. Julie is an incredibly passionate professional and advocate, and we are lucky to have her in Oregon. Without further ado, I want to please welcome Julie Hines.
Thanks so much, Michael, and thanks to Marion County Health and Human Services and to Bridgeway for co-hosting this. This is awesome to be able to see people here and see some of the students here. Emmanuel, love that poster, and I'm so glad you stuck with it because, dude, it's so cool. And the art and the messaging are just really, really awesome. I really appreciate being a part of this. Don't want to bore the heck out of people with talking about a nonprofit for quite some time, but do want to share a little bit about our council and a little bit about what we're doing and maybe how we can be a resource to you across the state. As Michael said, I used to work in Lane County and had the opportunity to partner with some of the great prevention people in Marion County for several years. And you guys are doing awesome work, and it's a really great to be able to be back and be able to partner together again. Let's move on to the next slide, Michael. So real quick flyover. Again, don't want to bore you to tears. The Oregon Council on Problem Gambling is a nonprofit. We're a statewide organization, kind of a small budget organization. We get most of our funding from the Oregon Problem Gambling Services, but we really are dedicated to minimizing harm in Oregon for all of Oregonians. This organization has been around since 1996. And it was formerly known as Oregon Gambling Addiction Treatment Foundation. Love that logo and the Comic Sans font that has to go with it. And it was upgraded, the logo, and a name change in 2008. And we are at 25 years now as an organization, and I'm very, very honored and humbled to be a part of it at this time. So let's move on to the next slide. So what do we do? If that font is pretty small, no worries. Just going to kind of share a brief summary about some of the stuff that we can do and then maybe how it can help you. So our three kind of main focuses are on service and research and advocacy. So when we talk about service, the kind of stuff that we're doing is we're trying to publish educational content and materials for people around some of the emerging trends on gaming and gambling. And you'll be hearing about some of those pieces from Marion County in a little bit here. But we're really trying to kind of develop content that makes sense to people across the state. And so some of those things that we'll be doing in the next few months have to do with also with alcohol and marijuana and video gaming, how those three have connected with the world of gambling. And then we want to build training. So we partner with the state around providing trainings for people. So if you head on to our website, you can find information about trainings. You can see old recordings of stuff that's been recently presented. In fact, we had the great John Ackley recently present with us around the process of gambling. And it's really, really interesting stuff. So if you have any interest in that kind of thing, even if you don't have interest in getting continuing education, please feel free to check that out. We hope these resources are really useful for you. We want to build relationships with people. So even with, say, casinos and industry, and we want to build relationships with other nonprofits and other sectors around the state. And we really want to try to encourage that, as well as especially thinking about Black, Indigenous, and other people of color and other marginalized communities in Oregon. We want to help bolster their efforts and help support more health equity across the state as well. Research, we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but we're trying to establish a research center so we can figure out what exactly is going on with the world of gambling in Oregon right now, and how are we going to take some of this information and digest it and then be able to help people in the future as well. And then advocacy. So we're right in the thick of a legislative session right now, and there's a lot of stuff that has to do with gambling on the horizon, with potential expansion, with potential opposite of expansion, retraction of, or potentially putting the brakes on some expansion in gambling in Oregon. So this is kind of all kind of the stuff that we're really trying to keep track of around the state. Next slide, please. So examples. All right, so here are some things that we're doing right now is we're looking at video gaming and gambling convergence. So we think about things like loot boxes and other convergence areas, microtransactions within video games. They don't necessarily kind of fit into that gambling legalization kind of definition, but we see more and more, especially when we think about video games and young people playing video games and every generation playing video games, there's more and more convergence than ever. These two have become more partnered. In fact, the gaming industry has taken a lot of its pages from gambling with its development of games and things like that, that we're paying more attention to that. And we want to be able to educate communities around what the meaning of this all is. Can parents then help understand what are the effects of some of the games and maybe loot boxes and things like that? And how do those interplay and intersect and maybe increase the risk for problem gambling? And we're doing some research right now. So we've had the opportunity to partner with the state, and we have some funding to be able to look at how has COVID changed gambling behavior, and how has COVID changed gambling behavior as related to alcohol use. So we're looking into alcohol use over the pandemic. We're looking at marijuana use in Oregon over the pandemic, and we're looking at video gaming behaviors over the pandemic. And we're going to take that information and get it probably by the end of May at the latest in June. And then hopefully then get that information, understand what's going on, what's the lay of the land right now with how COVID-19 has changed these things. And then looking into the future, how will this affect in the long term? So we're going to hopefully revisit some of this data at a later time and then be able to hopefully bring that forward to Oregonians to help understand what are the impacts of all this and then what can we do. And then finally, with the legislative session, there are a few bills on the table that have to do with gambling, as well as looking at even putting together a task force on understanding the effects of gambling. So this is all of what we're monitoring. We try to share those with our partners around the state too, if they're interested in things like that. All right, next slide, please. So again, wanted to keep this brief, didn't want to bore people to tears, and we definitely, though, want to be a resource to you. So if you have any information that you'd like, data that you would like to have more information on with regard to gambling, gaming, intersection of some of those things that we've talked about, if you want any educational materials, if you want to know more about trainings, if we can help in any way with advocacy, we're here. We want to be a realistic resource to Oregonians, and so please feel free to reach out. Our handles are right there. So Oregon Council, we're at Oregon Council on Twitter and on Facebook. And on Insta, we are the Oregon Council. And then on LinkedIn, you can find us if you just type in Oregon Council on Problem Gambling in there, or you can head to that link. And feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'm Julie at OregonCPG.org, and I'm going to throw that into the chat. Again, just really want to express a lot of appreciation to Marion County as well as Bridgeway for hosting this and having the Oregon Council out. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just mention that sometimes when I email Julie, it's almost like she's expecting it. She knows what I'm going to ask, and she responds within like a minute. So very responsive. If anyone ever forgets Julie's information and wants to reach out to us as well, we're more than happy to pass that information on to.
Yes.
So thank you so much, Julie, again, for giving us an overview of what the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling is doing for us in our community. Right. So that brings us to our main event, Problem Gambling Insight, Seeing Problem Gambling in 2021. March is Problem Gambling Awareness Month, and so that's why we do hold an event every single March, so that way we can gain a greater understanding of problem gambling in our community. Now, like with any recreational activity, gambling is an activity that carries risk, and it is a behavior that occurs along a continuum. Most people will be just fine setting time limits, setting money limits, and playing for entertainment only. With this being considered, it is important to remember that gambling is an activity that, again, does carry risk. That means some people will develop a problem with gambling. However, unlike other use disorders like alcohol and other drugs, problem gambling, or even worse, a gambling disorder, can be more easily hidden. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss the intricacies of gambling, when it becomes a problem, and why we should all care. We will also review research and local statistics. We hope to increase awareness of problem gambling and bring it insight. Therefore, we've titled today's event, Gambling Insight, Seeing Problem Gambling in 2021. All right, we have our first poll question. So if you guys want to, please grab your phones or an internet browser and answer our question today, just to see how everyone's doing. Again, we traditionally hold this event in person so we can read the room, but unfortunately we cannot today because of COVID-19. So if you do get the chance, please go to pollev.com MCHHS 2019 and let us know. Looks like we have a few people just mentioning they're doing pretty good, which is great. Glad to hear. I know that it is nice having some sunny weather outside. I do definitely appreciate that, as I hope everyone does too. All right. All right, thank you so much, everyone. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this first section over to my co-host, John Ackley. John is a gambling and substance abuse counselor at Bridgeway Recovery Services in Salem and has been a counselor for 14 years. Through his experience and expertise, John understands the process of gambling addiction behaviors, how they build and become more destructive over time, specializing in breaking down the unique behavior of problem gambling among his clients. I have had the pleasure of working alongside John on this project as well as others. His passion for helping his community is incredibly inspiring. So without further ado, please welcome our co-host today, John Ackley.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. So just kind of dive in today. Problem gambling, what is it? How is it caused? Like Michael was mentioning before, a lot of people in the state of Oregon gamble, but only a certain portion of folks generally are at risk or develop problem gambling behaviors that are dangerous to them, dangerous to their families, and have negative consequences in their lives. So what I'm hoping to do today is take a look at what is problem gambling, how do we define it, and what are some of the root causes behind it in a very basic way so that folks can go away with a bit more insight and education of what to look for and how it impacts folks that they can then share with themselves and families and anybody else who you come across who it might be pertinent to. So moving along. Let's just start with a little history, if we may. Why do folks think dice have dots on them? Would be curious to get some responses, again, using the pollev.com at /MCHHS 2019. Go ahead and type in some of the ideas. Why do people think that dice have dots on them instead of numbers? And there's a valid reason for this that kind of goes to the root of gambling, if you will. So I'm just going to leave it here for just a second, see what kind of responses, what kind of ideas people might have as to why we don't print numbers on them. So one, people like patterns. People use dots before numbers. Okay. Dots are cheaper to make dice with. I wonder if that's true. Okay. The dots don't throw off the weight of the dice. Interesting. Getting a lot of people who seem kind of knowledgeable about this. Anybody else? For people to count the numbers instead of looking at the dice without having to count and think about it. Okay, see, that's kind of going there. Numbers can affect weight because it's hard to distribute weight. Thus, the dots are evenly distributed. Okay. Anybody else have ideas? Because actually some people have come pretty close to these. Looks like eyes, easy to see, okay? Okay, so somebody actually got pretty close to this. People use dots before numbers. This is actually true. If we think of the numbering system that we use today, the Aramic numbering system that we use today, that's been around for somewhere between, probably 1,000 to 2,000 years. But gambling predates that by a huge portion. They have actually found evidence of gambling devices similar to dice in graves that are over 18,000 years old. And there are reference in ancient Sumerian to people having problems with their gambling behaviors around dice and other gambling behaviors. So gambling is something that has been in the human culture all across the world for tens of thousands of years. It's something we've been doing, and we have evidence has been causing people. It was easy to see, not a language dependent. There we go. Okay. But we have evidence that gambling has been around for years and years and has been causing problems in relationships for over 10,000 years. There's early writings of spouses being frustrated about their partner's gambling behaviors. And they were so frustrated. Think about it. They were pressing things into clay tablets. They were so mad because writing wasn't as easy back then as it is now. They were so mad about the gambling that they felt it necessary to press their anger about their partner's gambling behaviors into clay tablets. So this is how long gambling has been present in our lives. Okay, so old history. Yes, there we go. So that's an indicator how long gambling's been around. But of course, gambling has morphed over time, and some of that we're going to talk about today. Because yes, we still have dice, but there's countless other ways to gamble today, and we have pretty easy access to it. So moving along, sir. So let's start out defining gambling, and we're going to use two different definitions. One, this is a Webster's Dictionary, I believe. Simple definition of gambling: to play a game in which you can win or lose money or possessions, or to bet money or other valuable things. To risk losing an amount of money on a game or a bet, or to risk losing something valuable or important, in order to do or achieve something. So that's the dictionary definition. Now, if we go to how Gamblers Anonymous defines it, Gamblers Anonymous defines gambling as betting or wagering for self or for others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or insignificant, where the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill, constitutes gambling. Now, this is a definition that they have come up with over time as people in Gamblers Anonymous are in that program, voluntarily in that program, to try and work on their gambling behaviors, to try and get some relief from their gambling behaviors. So they have crafted this definition very carefully. So in order to keep themselves safe in their efforts to get into recovery from gambling, so that they can't, as we all do as human beings sometimes, kind of edge around something or to engage in just a little bit of something. This makes it pretty clear that to make it pretty cut and dry, to not leave any wiggle room for what might be gambling, what might not be gambling. So that's how Gamblers Anonymous defines it. Now, one of the aspects of gambling is the gambler's fallacy. Okay, this is kind of a core belief system that is very, very prevalent in problem gambling behaviors. Gambler's fallacy is the belief that the chances of something happening with a fixed probability become higher or lower as that process is repeated. People who commit the gambler's fallacy believe that past events affect the probability of something happening in the future. And this is a belief system that can trap people and cause them to have some mistaken beliefs about their wagering. So let's take another poll here. Again, going to pollev.com at the MCHHS 2019. If you flip a coin and it comes up heads 5 times in a row, on the next flip, what is most likely to happen next? Let's see what people think here. That one responded. Okay. There we go, some more people weighing in. Give it just another moment or two. Okay. What, are people changing their minds here? What's going on? I love watching this evolve, folks. Okay. I would love, if we had the time, I'd love to know, because to me it looks like watching this happen, that people are changing their minds based on other people's responses, etc. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, I
Let's
think that's
stop.
what's going on. But yeah, it is interesting to see things change once you get a few responses, right?
So let's kind of call it there. Okay, well, still evolving. Looks like we could play with this for a while. Let's leave it at the 18% people think tails, and it looks like a large portion of folks are saying it could be either heads or tails. It is actually C, either, because if I were to flip that coin, my flip is not dependent on any of the previous instances of flipping that coin. It is still a 50-50 probability as to whether it comes up heads or tails. There's a very famous instance of this in Monte Carlo over in Europe back in, I want to say it was 1918, might have been a bit earlier than that, where a particular roulette wheel was coming up on black very, very frequently. And it ended up over time coming up on black 25 times. And by the end, people were wagering entire fortunes. And back in 1918, to bet $1,000,000 was like betting $1 billion today. And people were betting that amount on that roulette wheel. And I don't mean to trigger people with amounts, but just to say each spin of that wheel was not dependent on the previous spin. It could have just as easily come up red. But in any pattern of random numbers that's long enough, there's going to be little segments within that huge random number that are going to look like patterns. And our brain is made to find patterns. And so if I see a pattern of 5 heads coming up, I might think that's significant. Whereas if I saw the whole huge pattern, and these were all random numbers with just those little 5 fives in there, or 5 heads in there, then all of a sudden it takes on a whole different significance. But as a gambler, I can be fooled by that. And so that's a trap that I can fall into, thinking there are patterns where there might not be any. So most people who gamble in their lives do not develop a problem. But for people who do develop a problem, gambling can be as addictive as drugs and alcohol. It can be as addictive as methamphetamine or crack cocaine. And we have taken, what this is illustrating is we have taken brain scans, not we, excuse me, scientists have taken brain scans using a particular scan that scans for activity in the brain. And those scans have shown, as you can look and see, people with problem gambling, people who are gambling. So as these images were taken, people were in the act of gambling. And as the images on the bottom were taken, these people were high. They were actively high on crack cocaine. And what this shows is not only is it lighting up the exact same parts of the brain, but it is lighting them up to the same intensity. So this is somebody who's high on gambling, and they're experiencing as powerful an effect as somebody who's high on crack cocaine. That is very, for anybody who doesn't have that experience under their belt, I hope most people on here don't, but that is a very, very powerful response, particularly considering the fact that that response for gambling is generated off my thoughts alone. I didn't put anything in my system to stimulate that response in my body. It's all based off of my belief system and my fantasy of what winning would mean to me and generating that response within my brain. That is, so people, we are thinking ourselves when we're gambling, and if we have a problem gambling behavior, we are literally thinking ourselves high. That's how powerful this is. So we have a little video here kind of illustrating problem gambling on the brain. If you bear with us for just a moment, I think you'll find it interesting, and it should illustrate what I was talking about a little bit.
Gambling. At first, it can feel a bit like getting behind the wheel of a new car. You're excited, confident, and in control. When you win, you feel on top of the world. There's nothing to worry about. So what's happening in your brain when you're gambling? The reward hub in your brain is like the gas pedal in your car. It gives the go signal to move towards what you want. The top-down control network is like the brakes in your car. It gives a signal to slow down or stop what you're doing. How you doing? Everything good? Addiction is like a communication problem between these gas and brake pedals. You keep pressing on the gas, but when it's time to stop, the brakes might not work. By the time you realize that gambling has become a problem, it can be difficult to stop. Gambling is now a habit. Habits are formed when brain activity shifts away from conscious control. You might feel like you're on autopilot. Once habit has taken over, you become very aware of gambling cues and triggers. Gambling isn't as fun, but you continue to do it to escape those uncomfortable urges caused by those triggers. As the consequences of your gambling get worse, so does your mood. At first, gambling has a positive effect on your mood, but in addiction, your natural mood set point drops. Over time, gambling becomes less pleasurable, and your set point lowers, even when you aren't gambling. It can lead to depression. Hey, are you worried about your gambling? This helped me, and it might help you. Have a look. The good news is that your brain is always changing, and you can reset your reward pathways. With help and support, you can stay motivated and develop a rich and meaningful life. For more information about the brain and problem gambling, visit brainconnections.ca. There is help. There is hope.
As we get more into our gambling behaviors, as it starts to take more and more of a prominence in our life to develop that habit that the video was talking about, some of the characteristics, and we'll go over a bit more in a minute here, but some of the aspects that we're looking for are, as I engage in this behavior more, I'm dedicating more time, dedicating more thought and attention, and dedicating increasing amounts of money to this behavior, particularly generally over when I started the behavior. Most people, not all, most people start kind of dipping their toe in the water, thinking that this is an enjoyable behavior and risking small amounts of money. But over time, the risks become greater and greater and greater. This has to do with the developing tolerance that we have within us, because we as gamblers develop tolerance for our gambling behaviors just like any other addiction, be it alcohol or food or methamphetamine, whatever it is. One of the signposts of an addiction is to increase tolerance over time. So what are some of the characteristics? I'm not going to go over each and every one of these, but just to look at on a continuum, we can kind of break up. There's 9 criteria that you can see in front of you that we use to determine whether a person has problem gambling behaviors. If a person meets, as it says here down below, if a person meets 4 or more of these, they meet the diagnosis for problem gambling behaviors. But that doesn't mean, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen there, if I'm just demonstrating possibly 1 or 3 of those criteria, I might still be at risk. I might be heading towards having a gambling disorder. And so that would be the time, if I had 1 or 2 or 3 of these, that would perhaps be the time to sit up, take notice, and say, hey, what's going on with my gambling? Is this having a positive, an overall positive impact in my life? Am I looking at this behavior clearly? And what's it getting me? Okay. Some of the things, to go back to the previous slide, just that are referenced here on this slide. One of the diagnostic criteria, upper left-hand corner here, is being preoccupied with gambling. Is it taking up more and more of my attention and time, particularly even when I'm not gambling? Am I planning when I can next get to gamble? Am I thinking of new strategies to gamble? Is it taking me away from my relationships with others? That can be a very noticeable trend in my gambling. Just to go to another corner, am I chasing my losses? If at top right-hand corner there, if I'm trying to win back what I lost before, rather than just considering whatever money I spent as entertainment value, but I start chasing those losses, then it's taking on an added importance in my life, potentially, possibly a negative importance, and combined with other things that can be an indicator of problem gambling behaviors. If we go to the bottom right-hand corner, jeopardizing relationships and job opportunities. Because of this preoccupation, because it's occupying my mind, because I'm allocating more and more of my resources, particularly money, to my gambling, it can start having effects outside of the gambling itself. Problems paying bills, honesty or deception in my relationships, trust issues within relationships. And it might be my primary relationships, might be my employment, might be my schooling, whatever they might be. Is it starting to have an effect outside the behavior itself? And then this is one of the biggest ones. If we go to the bottom left-hand corner, gambling to escape problems. If I start viewing my gambling behaviors as something that's a relief or a relaxation, and I start using it increasingly to avoid other life issues, that's a very strong indicator that I'm using the gambling behavior itself in a way that's potentially harmful. In other words, rather than taking on and addressing those challenges, I'm using the gambling as a mental escape to escape those problems rather than address them. So what is problem gambling? Let's expand that continuum we were talking about there. If we go from the left-hand side of the screen to the right-hand side of the screen, obviously there are some people who just don't gamble. And if you don't gamble, it's really hard to have a problem with problem gambling behaviors. Casual social gambling. This is actually the majority of people in the state of Oregon. From all the indications in the research that we see, the vast majority of people fall in the casual social category, to where they're gambling to an extent that it does not cause significant issues in their life, does not cause financial problems or relationship problems or any of the diagnostic criteria that we were indicating before. And it's something that is potentially likely an entertainment in their life, but other than a entertainment, is not taking a prominent place in their life. If we keep moving along the continuum to serious social, this is where it's starting to take on a more dedicated attention in their lives. It might even be scheduled or structured, such as I've had people on my caseload who had regular poker evenings or regular trips to casinos or whatever. This is something that is scheduled into their lives. And so it's taking on a bit of a structure within their life. They're more serious about it. It might still be social. It might not be having negative consequences, but it is something that has become programmed into their social and entertainment planning, if you will. But I can still, if we continue along the continuum here, it's possible to keep continuing to where that non-diagnostic harmful involvement, where I may be displaying one or up to three of those diagnostic criteria, I might starting to have some negative consequences from my gambling behaviors, just not diagnosable yet. But I'm starting to have some negative aspects to it. And the question is, how aware am I of contrasting what I'm getting from my gambling behaviors versus what it's costing me? And am I taking an honest look at that balance? And if I don't potentially stop my gambling behaviors at that point, I can fall over to the right-hand side of this continuum and develop more and more consequences to where I'm actually meeting that diagnostic criteria of those 4 to 9 criteria, being able to be diagnosed as having pathological gambling behaviors. Okay? Is it affecting my life to that degree where it's impacting me severely in my life? So let's take another quiz here using the poll EV. What type of gambling do people think is the most addictive here in the state of Oregon? Very curious to see what people's responses are. Please go to that website again, pollev.com. Register here. So we've got some video. Okay. Going on with the shifting again. Down, back. Somebody's changing there. Going to the video. Down. kind of 3/4, 1/4 thing going on there. Looks like we're settling out. Any other responses? Oh, another person who thinks scratching lottery tickets. Okay. So I think we'll leave it there for just a moment. So fact of the matter is, it's actually the video gambling. So 67%, 2/3 of you, well done. The scratch tickets actually kind of come in second, behind the video gaming. And then everything else, I'm not quite sure, but just in dealing in my dealings with clients, mostly it's by a huge large degree, it's the video gambling, and then after that a bit of the lottery terminals, and then other things. This is not to say that I can't do sports betting addictively, or I can't do poker addictively, or I can't do all kinds of other things addictively. It's just talking about the majority of people and those things that are most addictive. Of the people who've sought gambling treatment here in the state of Oregon, 70% have said that video gambling machines were their primary activity. And for me, it's actually, here in my caseload, it's actually a much higher number than 70%. So here's one of the things about the gaming industry, particularly the video lottery terminals. They are designed to suck us in, to capture our attention, to keep us there. Okay, and this is an advertisement that we've kind of made, we copied and cleaned up from an actual advertisement at a gambling convention. And when we say gambling convention, this is a convention put on by the manufacturers of the gambling machines for the industry. In other words, for the casinos and for the buyers, so that they can sell their machines to the casinos. And this manufacturer said, at this manufacturer, we have been dedicated to the design, development, and manufacturing of video lottery gaming systems since 2000. We are committed to market research and ongoing product innovation that will allow us to stay one step ahead of the competition. Anybody who's been into gambling has seen that games evolve over time, and they become more complex. They stay relevant. They introduce new games according to what's going on in society. It might be a Simpsons game. It might be a Walking Dead game. It might be, and they make them more complex. The line games did not start out with as many lines years ago as they do now. They've had to make them more and more and more complex to meet clients' needs. And what is the client's needs that they're trying to meet? Some of these quotes down at the bottom will tell us this. These are both designed by stated by slot game or video game designers. In the industry's view, the only valid reason for a person to terminate play and leave the machine is needing to go to the bathroom, a show starting, or the person's bankroll ends. So what they're essentially saying there is they're trying to design these machines, A, to be immersive, and I hesitate to say potentially addictive, and also they're trying to remove the person's self-will, the person's ability to leave the machine. They're trying to make it so immersive that I escape into the machine and lose my ability to say, that's enough. I should be done now. They're going to design the machines with that in mind, to keep me captured in the machine. And they recognize this with this other quote: our best customers are not interested in entertainment. Well, isn't that what this is for? Entertainment. They want to be totally absorbed to get into a rhythm. This is talking about that habit and escape, viewing the machines as an escape. And the technical term for this is dissociation. For me to be on that machine and achieve a dissociated state, so it's just me and the machine and nothing else. I perceive it like a mental vacation, but the problem is I have to keep feeding money into that machine to stay in that mental vacation, and I'll keep feeding money in even if I'm losing, because even if I'm losing, I'm still in that mental vacation, and I'll pay any amount to stay there. And these folks are designing the machines with that goal in mind. They're not designing them for entertainment. They're designing them to capture people. It's a hook with a bait on it, with bait on it. They want us to take the bait. So to give you an idea of the scale, what we're dealing with, in the US, slot machines grossed more than $1 billion a day across the United States in 2012. That's more than the gross of McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and Starbucks combined. Those are not small companies we're talking about, okay? Those are some of the largest companies in the United States. And gambling outstripped them completely. That says a lot. So what are some of the social costs of gambling disorder? There are more emergency room visits for domestic violence related to gambling than for alcohol. That's a pretty startling fact. In counties where there are tribal casinos, 8.6 of property crime and 12.6 of violent crime are directly attributable to gambling. These are all based off scientific research that's been done. This one is very prevalent and very well known, unfortunately, in the gambling treatment community. The suicide rate for gambling disorder is higher than alcohol disorder, although confounded by comorbidity. In other words, there's a lot of people for whom there's alcohol and gambling behaviors present, and so that muddies the review a little bit. But overall, there's many other studies out there besides this one that say that the rate of suicide for gambling is higher than for virtually any other addiction. Any other addiction. Think of that. And there's reasons, there's very specific reasons why for that. And I kind of speak to that in some other trainings that I do, but just think about what it means that suicide is higher for gambling than any other addiction. That's how serious and powerful this addiction is. And the social cost per gambling disorder for diagnosable individual is a minimum, an average of $9,393 per year. That's an average. Now, what if I've been gambling for 10 years? On average, that's I'm looking at $100,000 there, just gambling for 10 years. That's a lot of money. So with that, I hope that's been a bit of an insight for folks. I'm going to turn this over to Michael again. He's going to give us some local context. He's going to give us some context for everything that I've been reporting and put it into some very real numbers for us. Take it away, Michael, sir.
All right, thank you so much. And again, I'll expand on some of the things that John had mentioned, but we're going to look at some of the local statistics and also some of the emerging research that we see, especially around video gambling itself. Okay, so my next question for everyone here is, how many people do you think have a gambling disorder in Oregon? We have a few different values here. Let's say a little over 1,000, a little under 22,000, a little under 84,000, or a little under 175,000. So go ahead and take your best guess what you think that number might be specific to Oregon. We have quite a few people saying 83,800. And kind of going back and forth between a little bit higher and a little bit lower there. Thank you for responding there. Let's go ahead and take a look at the answer. Yeah, seeing them go back and forth. It's an interesting concept there. So, what is the estimated number of people in Oregon who struggle with a gambling disorder? The estimated number is 83,800. So again, to put that into context in terms of how many people that would be enough people to fill the Moda Center where the Portland Trailblazers play the NBA basketball team 4 times over. So again, if you put it into those contexts, it starts to make a little bit more sense as to what the sure number of people who could be diagnosed with gambling disorder today are. Again, that estimated number. However, if you put it into context of how many people are actually seeking treatment, just a little over 1,000 had sought treatment in 2017. So we really do see a disparity between those two numbers. And what we really want to do is try and break down that disparity and get people help that need it, but also to bring down the estimated number of disordered gamblers at the same time. So again, to kind of put this into context, the estimated number for those who have a gambling disorder in Oregon is, again, a little under 84,000. Now, there's also an estimate, according to a study done by the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling and Portland State University in 2018. There's also an estimate in terms of how many people are showing at-risk behaviors for a disorder, but could be considered having a problem. And in Oregon, that's that higher number, that 174,000 person number. If we put that into context of Marion County, you'll see the numbers being reflected there. And in all, when we put those statistics together, about 8% of Oregon adults are showing problem gambling behaviors, again, along that continuum that John was talking about. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we come up. But based off of Marion County's population, we can have an estimate in terms of how many people have would meet some sort of problem with gambling within the last year. Now, this is just a different take in terms of what that looks like along that continuum. In Oregon, under 50% are non-gamblers, about 43%. Now, almost 50% are non-problem gamblers, so people who, again, do it recreationally but don't have an issue with that. And then we start to see in those low-level problems, 54% of Oregonians, and then 2.6% are in that moderate to severe problems of gambling, and that's where we can diagnose people at that point. So as you'll see, most Oregon adults, again, do not have a problem with gambling. And again, the problem is problem gambling, not necessarily gambling itself. However, again, it is an activity that does carry risk. And for those who have a moderate to severe problems with gambling, we want to kind of look at how that affects our society, right? One of the things that we can look at is how problem gambling affects the costs to residents. So according to that same study from Portland State University and the Oregon Council on Problem Gambling in 2018, problem gambling is estimated to cost Marion County residents, or the study that they did was about Oregon, but when we do a population estimate, that for Marion County would be $41 million every year in higher rates of bankruptcy, loss of relationships, criminal activity, loss of productivity in the workforce, and other mental health and addiction problems. Specific to Oregon, that's estimated to be about $500 million a year. So again, that shows that it does have a societal cost alongside it. But also, it does have other health concerns that we're concerned about as well. As these statistics show, problem gambling is associated with other health concerns. A person with a gambling problem may be using gambling as an escape, like Johnny mentioned, from other stressors or hardships in life, just like with alcohol and other drugs. About 2/3 of Oregonians diagnosed with a gambling disorder and who are in treatment, about 2/3 of them have a current alcohol problem. About 1/3 of them have a current drug problem of some sort. Almost 1/4 have or are current tobacco users, which is higher than, all these numbers are higher than the adults who don't have a problem with gambling. About a 1/4 experience suicidal ideation, and 4 out of 10 about have had a mental health episode on top of their problems with gambling. So again, we do see other health concerns as to why public health wants to try and step in to try and prevent problem gambling from occurring. The other thing to take into consideration is that problem gambling does affect other people as well. Having someone in your family with disordered gambling puts you at 8 times greater risk to develop disordered gambling than non-disordered gamblers. So there we start to see a little bit of a genetic component, as well as maybe an environmental effect from family. Problem gamblers or at-risk gamblers have a greater proportion of friends and family who gamble regularly. So again, we start to see, for someone who has a problem with gambling, they're associating with others in their family, with their friends that normalize that behavior, and might be harder to recognize when a problem does start popping up. For each disordered gambler, many others are affected. People with a gambling disorder affect the lives of 8 to 10 other people. So again, with genetics, with individual resiliency and environmental risk factors being friends, family, or opportunities in the community, they all play a role. One of the things that we want to do, again, with that public health perspective, is we want to look into the community role in problem gambling. So gambling in Oregon, what we know. In order for someone to have a problem, they obviously would need to have an opportunity to access gambling. Opportunities to gamble for adults in Oregon are readily available with online gambling, slot machines, let's say at nearby casinos, or let's say video gambling machines at bars and restaurants. Now, we do have local data, and again, we're using data from the Oregon Lottery because it is accessible, whereas other forms of gambling, let's say money spent at casinos, online, sports betting locations, or other formal or informal forms of gambling, that data is not available to us. So we're really just using the Oregon Lottery's data here to paint a picture as to what the severity in our communities might be, again, strictly because that data is available to us. But you'll see here that close to 70% of the Oregon Lottery's sale revenue came from video lottery specifically. So you kind of see a similar statistic there to the amount of people citing that they have a problem with gambling. Now, most Oregon adults do not play video lottery specifically. 16% of Oregonians played video lottery in the last year. And specific to Marion County, 18% of Marion County residents played video lottery in the last year. This is according to a public records request with the Oregon Lottery, and those numbers are specific to 2019. Now, what we want to do is try and do a little bit more pinpointing in terms of where those problems are occurring. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show video gambling sales by zip code and break that down. I do want to mention with this information that some people obviously in where they gamble might be across zip code lines, might not be exactly in their local community. So take that with a grain of salt. And also we're using Oregon Lottery data because it is available to us where other forms are not. But as you'll see with this map, this heat map, that you can kind of see where those spending trends are within the county. Sales of video gambling in Marion County in 2019 was close to, but not quite, $94 million. And you'll see that most of the spending is being done or spent in the Salem area and then also up near Woodburn. Now, important considerations to take in as well is what happens when you take into account population size, right? Estimated adults who play video lottery, and also what household incomes are in those areas as well. And when we do that, it starts to paint a different picture. This map that I'm putting up now shows how much money is lost per zip code if everyone 21 or older played video lottery in 2019 in their local area or zip code. Well, again, this is not an exact science. It does show us how much money is being spent by population, giving us a better idea of where we might want to target our outreach and limited resources. So you'll see with that, we have a heat map of locations being, or money being spent kind of in the Staten, Salem, and Woodburn areas primarily. However, important thing to remember with this map is that these numbers also represent if everyone 21 or older played video gambling games. We know that the actual number of video gambling players is a fraction of all adults, and that's estimated to be about 18% of Marion County. Therefore, the financial burden on regular players would be higher than the amount shown right now. Unfortunately, we do not have data that breaks this down into more statistically reliable detail. We just have some estimates that we're showing here. Probably one of the most important things to consider within this as well is equity. Equity is important because it tells us how much money people have to spend in those local areas if they were to be gambling there as well. In the Salem area, the 97301 downtown to kind of northeast part of Salem, we have lower household income, median household income specifically. Also in the Woodburn area with the 97071, and then kind of that northeast Salem to Brooks area, they were on the borderline of almost getting above that 500 per 21 or older adult. They almost got 500 and were almost red. They also have a lower household median income than Marion County and Oregon as a whole. So this gives us an idea of communities who may be in greater need for outreach, education, and of course resources to try and prevent problem gambling from occurring. Now, video gambling leads into other behavioral concerns that we're learning more and more about. And Julie kind of talked about this a little bit, and I wanted to talk a little bit more and also do a poll. In that video games do have some intersections with problem gambling as well. So if you get the chance to, please jump back onto poll everywhere. So pollev.com/MCHHS 2019, and let us know what you think. What similarities do you know of or see between video gambling machines and freemium phone video games? So the games that you might play on your phone, like let's say an example would be Candy Crush or another type of game. And if anyone's curious, I did create this game called the Pirate Booty. It's not a real game, but just for the sake of a visual, I wanted to put something in there. So responses we have are playing with credits or points used instead of cash. That's definitely something that is being used, like John had mentioned, kind of disassociating money from the game itself. Sounds and colors, right? Bright colors, sounds, things like that are also being used by both, yes. Exciting, fun, bright colors, yep. Ability to get lost in the game and lose track of time. Definitely losing track of time is
absolutely huge.
Yeah, especially with console games, the console video games that you might play on PlayStation or something like that. Noise, yeah, you can incorporate noise, graphics, things like that into it. To play, you need points, right? So you have to spend money to get points, that kind of thing. If you spend more, you get a greater reward. So especially with those phone games, if you spend more money, then you advance faster in the game. And the faster you advance, the more you get rewarded by that intrinsic feeling of, I enjoy doing this, I'm going to keep doing it, right? So again, these are all great responses. Other ones could be, let's say, variety of games to choose from. So yeah, you might not have, let's say you have an infinite number of games you could pretty much play from on your phone, tons of different types of games you can play on consoles as well. Same kind of thing with these video gambling machines. They incorporate the same idea. So great responses. Thank you, everyone. As some of you had stated in our poll, we are aware of some of the crossovers between gambling and video games. For instance, you may see popular video games as themes of slot machines. John had kind of mentioned that before, and I have a visual representation of what that would be in the picture on the right. We also see gambling opportunities in video games. Loot boxes are an example, and I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. And betting on outcomes of video game tournaments or esports. Esports are one of the fastest growing industries in the United States and across the around the world. Especially with COVID going on, we're seeing more people having to not be physically around others, and that can increase the amount of people paying attention to some of these sports as well. So while the DSM-5 that was released in 2013 hasn't officially classified gaming disorder as a mental health condition, however, it is up for consideration with more research. The World Health Organization's ICD-11, which came out in 2018, has made that determination. And new studies within the last few years are showing links between problem gaming and problem gambling. People showing signs of problem gambling and problem video gaming have used substances more frequently than those who either are non-problematic or at low risk. So again, we're seeing the co-use of multiple substances on top of some of these behavior things that we don't really think of as traditionally being a problem, disorder, addiction. Video games appear to be a gateway behavior to problematic gambling behaviors, says another study. Growing evidence shows non-substance addictions as coping mechanisms. So again, someone might be using video games, gambling, or other things, not necessarily substance-wise, to escape from other things in life that they are concerned about, right? Loot boxes, so again, that image in the middle there, loot boxes and video games are linked to problem gambling. What loot boxes are, they are random in-game purchasable content. So let's say if you're playing a sports game and you want a new jersey for your team, you might spend money on a loot box and you might get that item, you might not. Or let's say if you're playing a different game and you want a weapon that's going to be more powerful than other players, that might be a rare item in that loot box where you have a much higher chance of getting a bunch of random items that you don't really care about. So again, if there's value in one of those items in the loot box, and there's a chance that you might not get it, that by some could be considered gambling. Now, that association with loot boxes and gambling is that there's cash outs, there's near misses, there's using in-game currency to, again, strengthen the links between problem gambling and loot box spending. So problem gamblers who might be playing video games are more enticed to play loot boxes. And there's growing evidence that kids who do play games with loot boxes and spend, a good amount of money on it, that could be linked to problem gambling down the road. However, we do need more research in order to understand that link as we start to understand more about gambling and gaming. Last thing I'll mention is that microtransactions in games, let's say on phones, allow for unimpeded progress. So the more money you spend, the greater the reward. This can encourage false hope. And that is another link that we see between problem gambling and internet gaming disorder that overlap. All in all, though, we do need to have more research and continue to grow our knowledge base about the links between problem gambling and problem gaming. But also just to understand what problem gambling is, or problem gaming is as we move forward. So with all that being said, we want to try and increase awareness to the severity of problem gambling and its associated concerns, and break down some stigma, right? Public stigma defers people to seek help and negatively impacts an individual's view of themselves. By removing these labels and using person-centered language, so saying a person with a gambling disorder or something like that, we can prevent problem gambling and try and treat more people. So what we're going to talk about in this third part here briefly is just what we're doing in prevention and also in treatment for gambling specifically. Now, before I launch into what we're doing, I want to make sure everyone here knows what the difference is between what prevention is and what treatment is. So there's a common analogy we like to use in prevention where imagine you're walking along a river, kind of like the river you see on your screen here, and you see someone is in the water and they're calling out for help. So you say to yourself, oh, I know that there's a waterfall downstream. I need to jump into the water and try and save that person. So you do that. You jump in, you save that person, and they're very thankful for that. However, you see more people in the water calling out for help, and you start to see more and more people upstream who are coming down that pipeline. So the natural response would be we need to immediately try and save these people. We need to build a safety net to prevent them from going over the waterfall. We need to try and catch those who might accidentally go over. And those are incredibly important things in our society that we do. And that would be the treatment end. But from a prevention standpoint, what we also want to do is we want to look upstream, see what are some of those reasons why people were falling into the water in the first place, and potentially build a bridge to prevent less people from falling in and needing treatment, but of course continuing that treatment in case someone does fall in by accident. So problem gambling prevention, what we do with Marion County in our prevention program is that we try and raise awareness. One of the awareness campaigns that I'll put on our screen here is called the Reflect, Resource, Renew campaign. So John had mentioned this just in a different way. The idea is to reflect on your own personal gambling choices. Ask yourself, do I need help? Do I need resources? And then to renew your commitment to doing that activity responsibly, or to renew your commitment to treatment or abstinence if you do have a serious problem with gambling. So the value of the campaign is to try and educate and empower people, reduce that stigma. And I'm just going to play a quick video that goes over this campaign itself.
In Oregon, most adults, 87%, agree that if people choose to gamble, they should have their own guidelines for gambling responsibly.
Reflect,
resource, renew.
Visit opgr.org for more information.
So again, we have materials out that go over that information, and we're sharing them across multiple platforms, online targeted ads, as well as when we were able to go to movie theaters and enjoy movies. We did have slides and advertisements that way. We had some billboards up, promotional materials in different ways. We've also done, John and I have done with one of our other colleagues at Bridgeway, we've done radio ads as well locally, and we've also, in interviews, and we've also had information on Capital Community Media, formerly CCTV as well. We also want to try and do presentations like this and events, so that way more people have a greater understanding of what this means. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that we do want to also offer technical assistance and provide presentations for schools, businesses, and community groups. So I'll go into schools and provide that expert information, and also provide presentations for students. I've also connected with different businesses to help them with providing more information. We also have toolkits. So for instance, we do have a business toolkit on our website. We are also developing an educational toolkit for schools, which is coming hopefully by next school year, when fingers crossed we're all able to return in person. And we also do a middle school art search. So at the very beginning, we highlighted some of our great artists in the county and their great work. We are currently in the middle of the 2021 Art Search, and the if anyone knows middle school students who would like to participate, those are due April 15th. And locally here in Marion County, you can reach out to me if you do have submissions. Youth engagement is also pretty important. The idea is that it doesn't necessarily have to be around problem gambling. Looking upstream, we know that problem gambling is also associated with negative risk factors, such as, let's say, antisocial behaviors and poor problem-solving skills. So knowing that, we want to try and reduce those negative risk factors. And we also want to try and boost protective factors that fight against problem gambling as well among teenagers and young adults. And this could be, let's say, good coping skills and emotional self-regulation. We want to do this to create, again, a resilient community now and a long term that can overcome personal and collective adversity to prevent those poor health outcomes. So we're also involved in various youth engagement activities and also advocacy in coalitions and committees. We want to make sure that people know problem gambling can be as powerful as substance use or substance abuse. And we want to try and educate everyone we can about that information. And I'll turn it over to John.
So here in Marion County, thank you, Michael. Here in Marion County, gambling treatment is offered through Bridgeway. Here at Bridgeway, we have several different modes of treatment available for folks. We have 2 full-time certified gambling counselors, as well as 1 full-time certified gambling mentor. And they're available, me being one of them, for what folks generally think of as regular outpatient services, including groups, individual sessions, planning with folks, helping them strategize, etc. In addition to regular outpatient, we also have currently, and we've offered this throughout the time of COVID, if you will, to try and reach folks, we have what we call the Collaborative Intensive Outpatient Program. And that is available for folks not just in Marion County, but folks throughout the entire state. It's offered 100% online via telehealth, so we can reach anybody throughout the state. We've currently got folks out in Lincoln County. We're contemplating some folks from some other counties right now. And they're participating in this program. It's much more intensive than regular outpatient. And we're hoping very soon we're going to be opening up so that so folks can stay in their house but still have this intensive outpatient experience for people who are really struggling with their gambling behaviors and struggling with kind of getting a set of healthy behaviors and ceasing their gambling behaviors. We're also going to have available 4 beds at our previous, what was residentially our Santiam house for residential. We're going to have 4 beds available for people who are participating in that collaborative intensive outpatient program for a 4 to 6 week period for people who are, again, struggling with their gambling behaviors, possibly already in the collaborative intensive outpatient program. And so they can get a timeout, possibly from their environment in a safe, supported environment, so they can kind of concentrate and settle down outside of their regular environment. Because sometimes when we're trying to do treatment and we're staying immersed in that problem environment, it can make that recovery work very, very difficult. So getting that little time out to try and get my head clear and get focused on my recovery. And then returning to residential services, again, the Santiam house is something that is slated for the future. We're certainly going to open it up. We just don't know the timeline yet for when that will open up fully as a residential facility. So if folks had any questions about any of those services, feel free. We're going to have some contact information coming up here for how you can contact me, contact Michael, or you could just we'll have the 877 My Limit line up there. You can always contact us through that as well. But here in Marion County, we are the primary resource for gambling treatment in this area.
All right. So thank you, John. We wanted to leave a little bit of time for questions as well. So it looks like we have a few minutes. I did want to invite one of our co-event coordinators here to see if there were any questions either through the chat here or through Facebook Live.
Yes, so it does look like we have a question. Will participants receive a certificate of attendance for today?
Oh, yes, I see that. Okay. Don, thank you for asking that. We don't have an official certificate that we can provide for, let's say, a certification. However, that is definitely something that we can look into in the future. That's some great feedback, so I do appreciate that. Today, we really just wanted to provide some awareness raising with our participants here through WebEx, but also to those on Facebook Live as well. But of course, through our rebroadcast on CCM as well. And do we have any other questions that popped up, Annie? Or maybe we answered a lot of things throughout the entirety of this presentation. That might be it.
Yeah, I don't see any in the chat box right now.
Okay. Well, we will be on a little bit just for a few more minutes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. If you do have questions, please feel free to send them in there. John, were there any other closing remarks that you had for today?
Again, just if somebody on here was feeling like they have concerns about their own behaviors, or if they have concerns about somebody else's behaviors, that's something we didn't really highlight. In the state of Oregon, not just are gamblers entitled to treatment, and all gambling treatment in the state of Oregon is completely free. It is not dependent on insurance, cash, or anything. But all treatment in the state of Oregon is free, not just for gamblers, but people who have been significantly impacted by another gambler's behavior. So it might be a spouse, it might be a parent, it might be a child, it might be an employer. All these folks may have. I've had an employer come in before because he didn't want to lose his best worker, but he saw the gambling that person was engaging in, destroying and impacting his business. So this boss came in and said, hey, how do I cope with this? What can I do? So we have here in the state of Oregon, and almost no other state has this what we call significant other treatment. So if you're concerned about another person's gambling and you're impacted by that, you're entitled to treatment in the state of Oregon as well, in addition to the gamblers. So I just think that was, and again, just to underline, all treatment for both the significant other and the gambler is completely free in the state of Oregon. And the number to call if you have concerns that for the whole state is 877-MY-LIMIT.
That's right. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Yes, it is free in the state of Oregon. And again, you can go to opgr.org. You can contact either John or I, and we can obviously share more resources, information, and connect with you in different ways. So, for instance, if you do have kids in school and you wanted additional information like this being provided to a health class, right? I can go in and provide that additional added resource to classrooms. So if you do think outside the box in terms of how we can increase awareness with problem gambling, please reach out.
And just to tag on what Michael's saying, I've reached out to correctional facilities. I've done presentations at churches. So both Michael and I do that. So feel free to reach out to either one of us.
Yes, and just for those who might be listening in on Facebook Live or rebroadcast, for those outside of Oregon, and thank you, Julie, for posting this in the chat, people can call 1-800-522-4700 24/7, or visit ncpgambling.org for resources that are listed by state. So again, we want to thank you to everyone for joining us. This presentation will be available on Facebook if you do want to see that again. And then also the presentation will be replayed on community media. I also wanted to highlight that the music credit that we'll be exiting with as well is from a local artist in Portland who's originally from Salem. So I will leave us off with that. Thank you again for everyone attending, and I hope you have a wonderful day.